Okay, agency construction system. Just talking about for federal highways, we do have a requirement that talks about sufficiently staffed and equipped. Ideally, most states, when they develop their project schedule for their state agency staff, they try to mirror and align with the contractor staff, so you're resource loaded to some level to have adequate coverage over the contractor's operation. However, keep in mind that some contractors, if they're going, it sounds like with your A+B time, what can happen, the contractor may start double shifting, which can do what to the construction staff? You're going to burn them out, and or you'll be needing to have them work long shifts, which for the contractors that do that for those projects, what I've seen is the state staff budget may not have been adequately supported to support that additional inspection coverage. So be cautious of that and be aware, and that may be an area, if you think that's going to happen, you may want to throw in an extra few bucks to make sure the construction staff has the money to support the oversight, as well with design build. Will that be an effect on the consultant design part of your house too? Absolutely. Got to remember, construction information comes from the designers, so contractors may actually run their engineer of record while trying to get some plans printed out. But remember, if you're doing an over-the-shoulder review, where does that leave your internal design staff? Same issue. You may be double shifting on them too. So keep those things in mind to make, hopefully you've got some money and resources to pull from to provide somewhat of a level of inspection oversight. But also, if you take a system approach to spot check periodically at certain milestones, that should give you a little more comfort that you've not letting the contractor running wild out there. Oh, wait a minute, I want to make a point here. Having the design builder hire and pay consultant employees to perform acceptance activities for sampling testing is not permitted. So I just wanted to make, because that's come up on some projects too. Okay, moving on. Agency construction acceptance system. Notice here we said must be carried out by the agency or their designated agent. In this case, it sounds like it would be Kevin and or your consultant group that can act as a designated agent for the state, depending on what your criteria is that was made when they brought up the contract. The idea is you're out there to monitor. Again, that's where the notice of non-compliance reports and those things come to fruition. You're not out there to dictate the contractor's means and methods, but you need to, like I mentioned yesterday, work yourself through the process. Ideally, what you're doing, design, bid, build, figure some internal milestones which you may want to put to stop to what the contractor's doing. To me, the suggestion there would be that let them go to the point where they don't physically like pour the concrete on a foundation. Up to that point, it's pretty much their risk, and have some spot checks, but otherwise that puts a little more risk on them. But if you let them pour the concrete and they haven't done the testing and or say get the rebar off the ground, you're just setting yourself up for some headaches. So again, that's the kind of stuff to think about putting into your contract and making sure in your pre-construction meetings that you keep that on the contractor's mind, in their front burner thinking every day that, hey, we can go up to this point for this operation, but up to this point, I may have to meet with the state directly to move ahead. Remember, time is money to the contractor. They will go for it unless you keep them under check. Okay, example of the org chart for construction. Very similar design, but again, in this case, for pointing out that reminder that there may be a federal highways involvement in the project that you need to recognize. Okay, for construction acceptance team, another org chart. This is showing up on the upper middle green, materials engineer for the lab. On the right side is the agency project manager, and then column on the middle left is the acceptance for the consultant, their variety of org chart, and on the right is the acceptance also for the consultant with materials, lab, personnel, etc. So that ties back to that one figure with showing the bridge structure. Okay, then we get into independent assurance. Definition talks about activities that are unbiased and independent evaluation of sampling and testing, not used to make a determination of quality or acceptability. So how many people have done an independent assurance test? Okay, anybody got a quick comment what it is, different from a regular sampling and testing test? Independent check of the checker. It's a firewall. The catch, my sample I normally use if for a split sample, taking a sample, cutting it in half, sample here, sample here. Independent assurance test. 10% oil for a hot mix, 10% oil for the state's independent assurance test. Is that a good independent assurance test? With 10% oil in both cores? Yes or no? How many say yes? Okay.
We don't have 10%.
Well, wait a minute. One at a time. How many say no? Okay, how many are abstaining and need to eat more cookies? Yeah, see, got to ask the right question. Okay, so the point on independent assurance, it's a correlation, calibration of the test and tester and their equipment. So 10% absolutely way too much oil, but as a test, it does show correlation, right? 10% oil, 10% oil. Now, if you take that to an acceptance test to meet your spec for oil, what would you say if it's a 10% test? Bad test, because your oil, typically for hot mix, would be what? What do you guys use?
Depends on what outright.
Okay, here, depends upon mix time, but ideally you shoot 5 to 7 and then actually lay down maybe 3 to 5, depending on what your test is. Yeah, so the thing is recognize what the test is for, recognize your personnel, because again, on design build projects, we've found examples of where the state told the contractor to do the independent assurance test, and then they also use that for the state's acceptance test, and both of those tests are unacceptable if federal aid funded. You can't do that. So these days, we shouldn't be running into that, but that's where some people didn't necessarily understand the requirements, and again, that's why we're trying to emphasize you recognize quality control test, acceptance test, independent assurance test, and there's a firewall between those three actions. Okay? So again, for independent assurance performed by agency or designated agent, not directly responsible for project acceptance, not used to make determinations of work quality or acceptability, like we just mentioned. Okay, with any kind of sampling testing, there's always dispute resolution. So how many people have been involved in dispute resolution? Okay, well here, let's put it to real life. How many people are actually married? Well, that just showed me that a few of you you must not be married, but your hands changed me there. So anyway, formal system designed to address significant differences between acceptance data and QC data. Just like change orders, issues out in the field, that's again pre-construction meeting, make a level of a hierarchy ladder of appealment, inspector to contractor staff, a contractor's foreman to the next staff. Try to keep some level of comparity, of level of authority with the identification who those people are. Any one side can raise it up in an X time frame bumps it up to the next one can bump it up and vice versa. Have that set up to where the goal is address it at what level in the field? The lowest level, right? Ideally. But as your fallback, in the worst case, dispute resolution, do you guys already have something like that in your plans?
We have dispute resolution.
Okay, is that part of a quality control plan too, or it's just part of your specs? Okay, Well, again, in a design-build project, because of the complexity and the timeliness of the issues, it's critical that you keep that pretty much on everybody's front plate and make it a common discussion. So when and if it does pop up, you know, timely notice, say no, move ahead, and just keep things going. Okay? Notice third bullet, use of a third party is recommended to avoid accusations of bias. That's everybody that's been involved in QA. That's just, it's sort of called the referee again sample. Just keep that in mind. Okay, then we get into laboratory accreditation and qualification, which as part of your design to build project you guys all have. Any particular contractors or consultants you guys use or labs for accreditation and qualifications?
See that qualified, that's the original materials. So any qualified labs, the contractor needs to be qualified by the regional materials center.
Okay, so regional quality labs provide the oversight for the contractor's lab, which is overarching to bring them into the national standards. Right, okay. That's good. Okay, then there's the accreditation program, laboratory qualification program, which based upon John just mentioned, sounds like you guys are covered in that area, but again, you may want to spell that out into the contract if you have any particular issues to help emphasize it. And then we get into personal certifications. It's just an example where one state, like showing any TTCP, the guy actually, in this case, has a picture of them with their dates and the type of sample test method that person has been certified for. Catches on a longer project, it's something you may want to spot check because over time their accreditation, qualification, certification can expire. So you got to hopefully make sure that you re-up on that, because when we've gone out, I've asked for the cards in some states and checked it, and they've been out there for a year and with an expired license. So you don't want to run into that, because when and if you run into a disagreement with the contractor, and whether it's your staff or their staff, you're just going to cause some headbutting. Okay, example of a design build QA organization, very similar to the ones I mentioned to you before.